So it should be going live now when the bar's loaded. So yeah, hello everyone. I hope everyone is having a good Saturday or whenever you're watching this. I'm here. Me and Alex are avoiding the sun, and we are inside. So yeah, we are here with Alex Pinto. So Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So hi Tom, thank you for inviting me to be here today. So I'm Alex. I'm a research dietitian working at Birmingham Children's Hospital, and I'm currently doing my PhD on PKU.
How far into your PhD are you? Is it a typical 6 year and then that?
It was a bit, yeah, because it was full time, so it was 4 years. But then with COVID, of course, I had to ask for an extension. So my timings kind of got delayed now. So I think I have at least 2 more years.
Oh, so it's added it's kind of reset the
Yes.
year, I guess, in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I reset 1 year basically because I was on my third. But
That's
wow,
frustrating.
yeah, no, it's fine.
But at least it gives you a little bit of break and then kind of come back refreshed, I guess. Is that the premise? So
Yeah. I mean, it just needs. I need a bit more time because I mean there is a lot of things some things we can do, but then it's not at the same speed as it was supposed to be. So I kind of need more time to be able to catch up with things. But let's see how things go.
yeah, we'll see. So I've caught you just before you're going off onto your holidays back to Portugal.
Yes.
So so I guess kind of if we start back to where you first were doing your degree, I'm guessing in Portugal. How did you come across? What did you study, and then how did you first get into contact or learn about PKU?
Yeah. So I mean, I was doing my bachelor degree in Portugal. So the bachelor degree is about nutritional sciences, and then there is kind of the different parts of nutrition from I don't know, the health and safety side to the clinical part. So I always liked more clinic, and then on the fourth year we need to do like a placement of 6 months. And to be honest, I didn't have many choices, and I remember having one class about metabolic disorders, and I thought it was really interesting. So basically, that's what I did. I tried to get an internship in the reference center in Porto, which I did, and that was my first contact with PKU.
And was that just specifically PKU, or was it a range of metabolic disorders? And then
Yeah, so I mean, in Portugal there is not as much of the other rare disorders as in the UK, for example. So, as in the UK, mainly it's PKU, but in there is even more. So to be honest, I didn't see much of the other rare conditions. So I was basically more focusing on PKU, and because I actually did my part of my thesis about that as well, because I did like a little research project. So I kind of started doing some research with PKU as well.
okay, it's interesting because we had Georgie on last week, and she said that she only had one class similar to you about metabolic, and it was just like, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, we'll go with that kind of thing.
Yeah, because it is, and when the professor usually talks about it in class, it's just, I don't know, it's a 1 hour class, and they just talk a little bit. But I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was one of those things like where diet actually makes a great impact on people's lives. So that's what caught my interest, I think.
Oh, okay, so then you did the 6 months.
Yeah.
And what did you kind of get from that? Was it quite people facing, or was it more behind the scenes? What sort of internship was that?
I would attend clinical appointments, and then I had some research at the same time. I mean, it was my introduction to research as well, so I was learning how to do research as well, just the basics, and also learning about PKU, which is, I mean, in the beginning, it's quite overwhelming, to be honest, because there is so many things, and it's so rare, but so specific. So there was a lot of, it was very, it was a really good experience. I've learned a lot in those times, and I think I kind of it was then where I started to enjoy research, and I think it was really interesting to read all that stuff about PKU and the different um, things that we have on the dietary treatment. It was really interesting.
And was it an adult focus or was it children's focus? Was it a mix of the two, considering how small the service may have been at that time?
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things because the system in Portugal it works quite different. So we don't have like a children's hospital and or we didn't have at the moment. And so basically, our clinic we saw from babies to adult patients, like 30 something years old. So we did see any age group.
So that's like you said, quite overwhelming in the sense of seeing such wide stages within the condition, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it was for me. It was really, again, really interesting because it's one of those things where you can read in the papers and then actually see it in clinic. And it has a different meaning when you see it. I think gives a different perspective rather than only reading about something. And it was really interesting because, as you say, I could see all the stages of the disorder. Even we had some patients that older patients that unfortunately were not diagnosed by newborn screening, that were neurologically affected, and I got to contact as well with that reality. So it does put things into perspective when you see everything that can happen, really.
Yeah, and I get because we've had Monica, who's quite a frequent viewer, who's from Spain, and she says she was one of the first people to be picked up by newborn screening. So how with the Portugal system when you were there, how long was the development of when did they have newborn compared to say here or other countries?
I don't remember the exact date, but
oh no, I won't be testing you to the
I don't know
to the exact date or year. That would be
no. I think I can't say an exact date, to be honest. But I know that there was a mixed phase, I think, when they started to introducing the newborn screening, and then there were some areas of the country that were not the system was not still working quite well.
Yeah.
And I think it was during that period there was some people that kind of slipped throughout the net, and those were the patients. I mean, these were older patients. I think they would be 40, 50, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's similar to.
You see it with, and also I guess it depends on the centres too, doesn't it? Because different centres pick up at different rates and that sort of thing across. Similar to this country, isn't it, in a sense? So, so then what happened after the 6 months internship? Then did you have to go back to your course and then finish the course and then go somewhere else, or?
Well, so that was basically that's the last part of our course. So we just write up our bachelor thesis, and and in the meantime, I always had in my mind that I wanted to go abroad. So I was just looking into, I don't know, some place to go, and it came up as an option, maybe coming to Birmingham. There is a module about metabolic disorders that is done 1 year here and 1 year in London. And I think after I finished my bachelor degree, I came to that course, and I asked if I could do an internship. And that was about it.
Was
I
there
had
was there
that's
any
on my
particular place about why Birmingham? You know, from did you want to avoid the sun? I don't. You know.
no, no. My choice was mainly about work because it was just about I've read about Anita's team
Hmm.
and all the research they have done until that moment, and they continue to do a lot. And I've seen that they were probably the most experienced dietitians working in metabolic disorders, and I thought that was probably the place that I could go to learn more, and that was basically it. That's why I chose to come here.
That's a fair response. We do have Anita in the chat. She's informed us that the Portuguese screening started in 1979.
Yeah,
She's just looked it up though, so she didn't know it herself. So that makes
I
us
was thinking about the 80s to be honest, but I didn't want to say it because I could be
could be
so
completely
wrong.
wrong. Yeah,
But I thought about the 80s.
you were close. You were close enough. I guess like so. Then you that all went through. You then came over, and then again, was it quite a steep learning curve from a
Yeah,
research and from a practical perspective? I guess.
yeah. I mean, it's quite a different setting, and yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the health system works a bit different as well, so I had to learn about that. Then about
Did you
uh,
know that before coming, or was that completely something that you
I
found out when at the location?
yeah, I think we just learn about the specifics when you actually live it, because otherwise it's a bit different reading about it. I
Yeah.
think and you just only pay more attention to certain details when you actually in the country and seeing how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things that was more interesting for me was, and a bit disappointing to be honest. Uh, it's true. Um, was about so when I started in Portugal, we were at the point of starting to. So actually, that was when I started my internship. They were starting to do the testing patients for BH4 responsiveness. So
Mm-hmm.
because Covan was made available for PKU treatment in Portugal. So when I came here and thinking that the UK would be would have any type of treatment that you could think available to their patients, it was a bit disappointing to see that it wasn't. And unfortunately, it's still not available nowadays, which it's sad because I think patients deserve every type of treatment that we know that can work for some patients, and it's a bit unfair. Right?
And I guess it's that like you're coming to learn or to I might be taking words out your mouth here, but going look at we do this amount of research with this active in there, and it's like there's this area that's still lacking in a sense, which is a bit like bit of a surprise, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was just about because, for example, when looking, you have amazing low protein foods with a wide range protein substitute. Almost every protein substitute it's available with all these flavors and everything. You have as well a good research teams, for example, and resources to do it, and a lot of experienced people in the field. But then, I mean, this is just politics,
Yeah.
and it was for me. It was just I was really surprised because it was something that I assumed it would be available. I didn't think about it, and it was just a surprise.
Yeah, and I guess and it continues, doesn't it, with the differences between the UK and then quite a lot of the Europe with the managing and the options of managing the condition, isn't it? So
Yeah, I mean there is different
yeah.
types of treatment, but it's just I mean this specifically BH4 would help a subgroup of patients, and I've seen when patients when you can change patients' life, it
Yeah.
does a tremendous effect on their daily life, and um, it would be good to have it here as well.
And I guess then that kind of, I guess, put more of a focus on the diet that you already knew about, but then having to go, okay, we really need to look at the little intricacies, and because I know a lot of your research now stems around
Yeah,
the diet as the basis in a sense,
yeah.
isn't it? So
I mean, yeah, BH4 wouldn't work for everyone, so diet is still a treatment that will be needed at the moment. So for us and for me, it's particularly interesting looking at different aspects of the diet and how this can influence metabolic control. And that's some of my our research for my PhD as well.
and how did you find, 'cause going from the Portuguese centre that was a mixture of ages, and
Hmm.
then coming purely to 0 to 16 as the or 0 to 17, 18, depending on when they go to the adult service.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
did you find that change? How did you find the focus of like?
For me, it was fine to be honest. I quite like the children, so it was. I always liked a lot working with children, even in Portugal as well. It was. I was really happy when I could work with young kids and everything. So for me, it was amazing, and it was really nice to see here. That's one of the things that you can't see anywhere else. Was for example, the parties that Anita organizes for the kids and everything, and that was overwhelming. It's so fun. Well, it's a lot of work
So
first, but then
stressful,
it's
stressful
yes
before, yeah.
before, but it's good because I think the kids enjoy it.
Yeah.
And coming back to your question, for us, for example, now doing research with the kids and everything, you have a closer contact with them as well, and it's really interesting for me because we can see other sides that we don't see in clinic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I guess it's that getting a really good ingrained control at an early stage and helping that, isn't it? And then reaping the benefits as they grow older. In a sense,
yeah, yeah,
it's a really good developmental stage, isn't it? So
yeah.
we have Suzanne saying hello, Tom and Alex. Thank you for coming to all the NSPKU campaign events, Alex. We've got Fatma. Hi, Tom and Alex from Turkey. We
Yeah.
we remember Turkey well. And you've done a paper, I think, together, haven't you? Or I saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Uh,
something about growth in PKU.
Something about growth.
No, no, no. I mean, the paper was about
Yeah.
growth in PKU.
I'm only messing, Alex. I'm only messing. Alex, you've been very supportive around the campaign to get Kuvan for the UK. That's from Suzanne. I think the child section is really interesting in the sense of, because you're not just working with the children, you're working with the parents, aren't you? And it's that the two different perspectives of having the condition and living with a person with the condition is two quite different areas with PKU, I find. How do you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because if you were treating adults, would be directly more to the patient, but then, as you say, when you are a kid, there is how the condition also affects the family dynamics and the parents. Um, I'm probably not the best person to talk about that because my I don't have much experience,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with clinic, although I have contact. But I can see that it influences the family interaction and how the parents deal with it. So yeah, there is a lot of interesting stuff on. I mean, on both sides, pediatrics and adults. It's just the issues are different. So it's very interesting.
How do you find the parents' responses to the research that you're doing with the kids then, when you're using the kids? And
I mean, I have to say a huge thank you for our families, our kids, our parents, because they are truly amazing. I mean, they support us a lot. They do a lot really. They do most of the stuff that we ask them to do. They do it well, and it takes effort because I mean research sounds probably fancier and easier than it is that it looks like. So there is a lot of hard work going on behind behind the scenes, and we couldn't do it without effort from the parents and the patients, that they are always receptive to help us out. So it's a huge thank you for them.
What's the strangest thing that you've got people to do on your research projects?
Strangest thing.
Yes, because while you have a think, I'll say one of the strangest things that Anita got me to do while I was a kid.
I mean, not. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Like in the sense of like, just like, obviously you've had Anne with the bloods and stuff coming in at crazy times and doing that sort of thing. Yeah. Obviously I've had very strategic, like, hour by hour food diaries to help test new medicines. And when looking back, you go, it's really vital. But at the time, you're like, this is really weird, like out of. So what have you got your families and kids to do for your research areas? Have you, or is it quite normal? Is it quite normal for you?
I think most of it's quite normal. I think probably the weirdest is collecting poo, probably.
And what was that for?
I mean, there is some studies looking at a bacteria that are in your poo, basically, and things about microbiota, things like that. So, yeah, probably poo was the weirdest thing.
Was that clinic based or at home based?
No, they do it at home, but I guess it's just challenging. I mean, it's not hard for them to do. Everyone has done it. Mm-hmm. We didn't have many problems, to be honest, but it's just how you introduce that conversation and talk about it, because you always, I mean, you're answering. If I ask you that, it's you will laugh first, probably. Probably you look me a bit
strange.
Yeah.
What age range were you trying to get that to be? Who are you?
Yeah, probably from, I don't know, 5 to 12, 15, 16. Yeah.
That's a hard age range then.
Yeah. I mean, some of them. Yeah.
To explain why you need to know.
Yeah. I think all the other stuff because they do so many things with us. I think they got used to it, and I think they enjoy that. Actually, they enjoy participating, and they know they are contributing for something, and to help out other patients with the same condition. So
yeah, I think like, for me, when I've took part in the research, it's always about not what will it solve or what will it help, but all knowledge is better than having no knowledge, in a sense, isn't it? So so it's kind of like, you're doing this for a little bit of time, but also this can help benefit people above age-wise or below age-wise, that sort of thing. So what did you find with that study, just out of curiosity? Or
we didn't find anything yet. No, we don't have the results yet. So
okay. Is it still ongoing? Yeah, because I think Tamara said what was that, to look at the gut microbiome? Is it biome?
Yeah, but
yeah. And she asked what the finding was, and there is no finding.
Yeah, not yet. So. The problem is, it's like research takes a long time.
Yeah,
as you know, and sometimes it's hard. It really takes a long time, and sometimes we don't have results as quickly as we hope.
And you need a wide range. Is there a certain amount of people you need, or is it just a decent chunk of people just to give a wide range of results?
Usually we have to calculate statistically what would be the minimum sample that we need to get to see if there is any significant differences or not. So that's part of the creating the research project. We have to account for all those variables.
Okay, and like, so out of the research that's completed, so to speak, because obviously some research then knocks on to find other research, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What's been your most proudest, or the thing that you've kind of been most surprised by in terms of your personal research projects, or the things that you've been involved with?
I mean, there is a lot of. I mean, I with our team we do a lot of research, and I mean with my projects that are part of my PhD, we don't have many results yet. But if I say, I don't know, I've for me some of the more interesting ones that I've just helped a bit and took part was there were some advanced recent papers on GMP. I think some of them where, for example, they saw the variability, or the impact on blood Phe levels each 4 hours on patients. I think that was massive, and from the patients as well, and from her. I thought that was really interesting because I think it couldn't have been done almost anywhere because it was like every 4 hours for 24 hours. So it's just amazing. I really like that paper and that data. Her data looking at GMP over 3 years were also very, very interesting for me. And then I was, for me, in the maybe in the beginning, I did a lot of multi-center studies, just looking at practices around Europe, for example, and that for me is always very interesting, just to see how different countries have a different type of approach, and to just put that together, and just comparing different practices, and it's, for me, that's really, really interesting.
So when you say Europe, how many different center or different have you been to? Nearly every country now in terms of touching
No,
base.
I would like to. I would like to, but
Alex's
no.
travel plan. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, we have done lots of research, was just looking at practices and everything, and now I still have a multi-center study, so I've been to several centers across the UK, which is also interesting because even though practices are very similar, but every team has their own differences, so it's interesting. And other countries, I've not been to, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've contacted with maybe Spain, Netherlands, Denmark. Quite closely, and it was really interesting.
And do you find, similar to what you're saying about the UK centres, is there still variance in other countries in terms of how they approach the condition, or is it a bit more uniformed?
I mean, I haven't been in different centres in the same country, for example, but I've as part of my research, we have people participating from different centres within the same country. And we see differences, from center to center, which is also interesting.
Is that in guidelines, in terms of guidelines with blood levels, or the approach with the products, or?
So with the blood levels, I think it was in the past years before the European guidelines were published. I think that was true. Different countries were using different targets and everything. I think it's more uniform nowadays because of the European guidelines. But still probably not in all the countries or all the centers. What I was saying, it was more about specific practices within the dietary treatment, because, for example, there is, as you know, in the UK we use an exchange system, for example, where you allow freely things that we know they don't affect blood Phe levels, and then others that you need to count to limit your protein intake. But then you have other countries which the practice is just to tell patients to count everything. So it's this kind of differences, or others. For example, other countries would use a different exchange system, so it wouldn't be like one exchange to 50 milligrams, but with different amounts of Phe. It depends. But it's always interesting, to see all these.
No, that's interesting, because I recently got, I think Suzanne actually from the NSPKU sent me a Dutch cookbook, and there is literally Phe levels on every, like what I would class as free with vegetables or something
Yeah.
like that. There's fee levels on everything. I was like, that's really intricate. Like in terms of the amount of detail and the amount that you're expecting a person to follow is quite strict, isn't it? In a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. We've got, what are the major differences mainly, well, what are the differences with the UK centres? Obviously we don't have to name negatively about the UK centres.
Oh no, for me,
but like terms of, is it more the dietitian's approach?
I was meaning more in the UK would be more, for example, how the team is set up and things like that, not exactly about the approach in itself. But it's still interesting for me rather than generally about the dietary approach.
Is the setup different, would you say, because of the size of their patient basis, or is it?
I think it's about that. Some have more patients, some have less. So that's why they probably differ.
Yeah, I think that's fair, isn't it? Because densely populated areas are going to have more people than others, isn't it? In a sense.
I mean, that's for me. That's interesting. For example, we have like the bigger centers where there is like a lot of patients coming, so they need more resources, and we also I have been also to more smaller centers. So for me, it's interesting to see all these differences in the teams.
Do you learn from each? So every center that you go to, in a sense.
I mean, for me, it's always, for example, one thing that changes is the hospital systems. They are different in every place. So, for example, for me, I have to learn all the time how it works in this center, how it works in that center. So it's not specifically about PKU, but it's and there are different ways of reporting things, and it's with every center I go, I think I learn something and I see a different approach. So I enjoy that.
Is it hard to normalize the data across Europe then, in a sense, when you've got such differences of like counting everything or that sort of thing? Is that why you have to do more of a research at a base of what are the differences first and then we can expand? Does that make sense, or is that?
I mean, it's basically to see, for example, when we compare, I don't know, metabolic control or things like that, you have to take into account, for example, what is available in the country, because it's different if you don't. For example, it's different in a country that you have to pay for your special low protein foods, or if you have a very narrow amount of protein substitutes, you have just a few, not very many flavors available. So if you know this will, you have to take this into account when you see the results, when you see actually how they are controlled, because this is a major influence. For example, if you have patients on BH4 that are responsive, they will tolerate more natural protein, and so all of this will influence the metabolic control.
A lot to take into account then, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah.
We've got Suzanne saying, what are your most needed research skills?
More needed research skills.
What are your most needed research skills, and are you good at statistics?
I mean, in statistics, I found it always challenging. I had to read a lot. Still nowadays, sometimes I don't know everything, but it's just. I mean, I think it comes with the projects. The more you do and the more you look at things, you start seeing as well how things work and the statistical side of things. But it's always good to have a statistician to prove you are not doing things wrong, because it can happen.
As a safety check. Almost.
I mean, and there are things that are too complex for me, and I wouldn't. I prefer for the statistician to do, because that's not my my field of expertise.
Yeah, you can't be good at everything. You need to have someone there. I guess a second of eyes is quite useful, especially when you're doing a research project for this such length of time.
Yeah,
Having a new set of eyes or a new person to look at it is quite useful in a sense, because you
yeah,
can get quite, I imagine, quite tunnel visioned, can't you? In
yeah,
terms
yeah,
of
yeah. I mean, it also depends. Some things are simpler. Some things you just need the complex statistical models and things like that. That's too complex for me.
We do have Suzanne did continue to say,
Yeah.
have you needed persuasion skills, or has it been an important skill to get to know the children you are studying, e.g. at Edale and stuff?
I mean, for example, we work as a team, and our I have to think, uh, especially Anna and Anita, because they are amazing and they know the patients very well, and it's always easier for in terms, for example, of recruitment. When you have a very close relation with the patients and you know the patients very well, I think it's easier. I think they feel comfortable to help you out. Uh, so probably that's not my part of the job because I don't know the patients. I mean, we are talking about patients that are followed since they are babies. For example, with Anita, so she knows them better than anyone else. So with that relationship, it's easier to recruit patients, I think.
But then when you get, like, I guess when you first came to Birmingham with the internship, how was that in terms of, you've got quite, this team was, I'd fair to say, is quite established, and then you've got you that comes in, kind of thing.
Yeah,
How did that, or were they welcoming with open arms?
yeah. I mean, I think I was very well welcomed, I think, and probably you need to ask the patients and families what is their view about me. I don't know, but for me it's important. For example, even if we don't notice, for me it's like in the parties or, for example, as Suzanne said, Edale, this kind of experiences when you are in contact with patients, and it's a very close contact. It's not like in clinic. You see beyond as well the PKU side. You see it as a child, and you also build a relationship and get to know them. And in the research setting, you also get to know the families better and work with them. I mean, for me, it was very positive. I don't think I had bad experiences, but maybe patients or families have a different thoughts. I don't know.
I'm sure they wouldn't do. I'm sure they wouldn't do, Alex. I think to be fair, like, you've always, from my perspective of when I've come to the parties, you've always been very visible, and I think for a researcher to be quite visible to the people that you're studying is quite vital, isn't it? Because then it's that element of trust that you're asking them to do this stuff, and you might not get the answer straight away because you don't within research,
Yeah.
but you're trusting in you and your team to
Yeah.
take
I mean,
this information.
I think for me, it's like they trust in the team and in the main dietitians, which are Anita and Dan. I think that's the base for it.
Cool. So obviously, when you now go round all the centres and there's these variants and stuff, what's it like when you compare, say, the UK and their systems to? There's obviously positive and negatives across all different countries and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, isn't there? And
Yeah, there is positives and probably I wouldn't say negatives, but
areas to improve on.
yeah, areas to improve exactly. uh, I think the UK has a lot of resources in some stuff, but it's probably is a bit repetitive. I think the thing that really makes me a bit sad and disappointed is about the drug therapies that are not available in this country, because it's basically, I think it's only here and Poland, I think, that is not available. So I still can't understand that. Apart from that, I think we have good things. Probably maybe um, I don't know really in terms of psychology support, if that's as easy as probably should be more. I think.
Is that a thing? Because I do find that a bit with the adult services here a bit, because obviously
Yeah.
it's not new, but it is still new in its formation.
Yes.
Is that a consistent thing across Europe that you find with the adult
It de-
services? Or
it depends. For example, I don't know about other countries, but I remember in the center where I started in Portugal, we did have psychology support, and it was done like very close, like every. It was like you would have a dietetic appointment and a psychology appointment.
okay,
So it was that frequent.
Mm.
So, for example, that was another change from here. Um, uh,
because it's not really
Probably.
considered here, is it at all?
Yeah.
Really. So
And in many countries, I'm not sure if it's there to help if needed or not. But I think that's probably a good point. When the years go by, it gets more important, maybe.
yeah, I'd agree. I think but as you have more and more people come into the adult service, I guess you slowly realise these areas to improve is what we're calling them, isn't it? So
Yeah.
what we find these areas to improve on, because you don't realise that they're an issue until you have multiple people say that they're an issue.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I guess that transition from, because it's so young, the transition from children to adult is that bedding in process is quite.
Yeah,
It's quite hard.
I think it's always probably something to look into and improve the transition process. I think it's quite important because it's like changing teams. It's new people. You have to go to another hospital. It's a different environment. You are not used to it. So I think the transition it's really important, and the more you can do and be efficient with it, the better.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's because you put so much faith and trust into the children team, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you're with them it's very hands on, isn't it? Or at least the obviously part of the Birmingham contingent, but at least that centre, I can only talk from that experience, is very hands on. So then when you go to the adult service and it's a bit more hands off, it's quite you're either really good with the diet and that's fine, or it's quite a let go, isn't it? In the sense that it's a bit. You go.
Yeah. No.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, for example, and that age is quite tricky when with some people having more problems, and I think with some it's just the trigger of like you having to change places, and maybe you just stop going to the appointments in the adult clinics, and that's it.
I think it's very easy to go off the radar with the adult services, and I think they're not. This is me personally, not very. It doesn't seem very well resourced or funded too much, because there's no. Well, at least in mine, there's no static full-time dietitian, so you have various people coming in and out in the week, which is fine for me. But obviously, I don't ask too much of them. Whereas if I was, a bit more inconsistent with my tolerance, I could see that becoming a little bit more of an issue, and the psychological thing too. Certainly, Anita might want you to get a little bit political, and she said, "What would you change in the UK if you had a magic wand, Alex? What would you change?
Would I change?
Yes,
I would make Kovan available tomorrow. That would be the first thing.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the first thing. Because I've seen how it can impact. Like, I've seen both things. The happiness of someone that really worked well, and as well, sometimes it doesn't work, and it's such an important thing that it was a bit of a disappointment as well in some cases, and I've seen both in Portugal. So But I think it's still positive. For the ones it works, it's amazing. So
And I think there's that kind of, and then we'll have that psychological thing of if you don't respond, how do you support the people that don't respond,
yeah,
and help them with that, isn't it? So
that's why we still we need to improve in terms of the diet as well, do
Yeah.
where we can, because that's gonna be the main treatment for some patients still.
What's the split in Portugal like with obviously, obviously, people like Julio and stuff will know more of the intricacies, but like if BH4 is available, many more people are on the diet, how many more people are just on Kuvan?
I think in Portugal, I don't know if it's like around 30 to 40% of the patients, but it depends really, because it depends on the mutations and if you are responsive to the drug or not. It might not be the case, because usually it's more you get better responses in milder patients, and in the UK there is also a lot of classical patients, so it depends.
Yeah,
I think it's worth a try because it can help some patients. If it does help some patients, for me it's already something good.
I think you need the harmonious. There's diet for people, and then there's this for people, and as long as the two work alongside each other, then there's no reason why it can't exist, isn't it? In a sense.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's like for example, the different protein substitutes. It's not for every patient the same. You like something, the other one likes something else, and you also have to fit the individual.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's like going to the supermarket. I am able to choose what I want, and you have different tastes. So you should be provided with the most possible options that you can to make your choices.
Otherwise, we just have one medicine. We just have one protein substitute.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got this one
but
protein
that doesn't
substitute.
work like that.
Exactly, you've got loads of different variables, isn't it? That has to be taken into consideration in a sense. Have you carried out a study that you've been really surprised by the results, or that necessarily it's gone a direction that you either disproving or proving that you didn't necessarily consider that it would? Or has it always kind of fell to plan?
I can't say. I mean, surprising. I found some surprising results. But as a researcher, you need to be open-minded about it as well. So you need to know and have in your mind that you may think something, but then it goes in a different way, and you need to just analyze it in a non-biased way and see the results for what they are. So for me, is usually it's always interesting. Yeah.
Has there been any that could come to the top of your mind that necessarily?
To the top of my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
are you that prepared? Are you that prepared that nothing is a surprise?
No. I mean, no. Don't get me wrong. Like we find surprising results, but and they are interesting. I don't know. I also do in other rare conditions. Probably those also. There is probably more surprises in there, I think. Maybe.
Is it because it's getting quite an extensively researched area now that it's getting more,
Yeah.
There's less grey areas in a sense. Would you agree with that, or is that?
I mean, it's controversial, I think, because it's like the more you go into it, you see there is quite a lot we don't know. So the more you know, you find out that actually there is more that you don't know. So there is more to study. There is lots of things to look into, because it's a condition we don't have that much experience because of the number of patients, and for example long-term effects.
Yeah, the age of people being on diet is slowly increasing, but not. Yeah. It's still of a limited age level, isn't it? So
Yeah. So basically, it's like seeing how the life cycle goes with people being on diet or not being on diet, things like that. There is always a lot of things to look into. That's why this is interesting.
Yeah, we're keeping you in the job. That's as we're growing older. That's Anita says the blood fee tolerance project is worth a discussion. Apparently,
yeah. I mean, yes, that was an interesting one. The fee tolerance one, because that was something that we back in Portugal, some data from Portugal, and that was looking at the period before patients were tested for BH4 responsiveness. So basically, that was trying to get patients to their maximum tolerance of natural protein. Because the thing is, you are supposed to be on your maximum tolerance, but sometimes, because I mean, it's hard to keep you within the target, and sometimes you just, if you have good control, you just stay with it. So what we found out was that in a lot of patients, we were able to increase natural protein intake. But bear in mind that the Portuguese cohort, probably there is a higher percentage of milder patients than we would have in the UK, which can affect the results. But what we found was, like, when trying to get them to their maximum tolerance before testing for BH4, we found a very, I think probably half of the patients, I don't know the exact figure, but a lot of patients were able to increase to some extent. And some of the milder forms actually didn't need BH4, but that was the really milder form. But that was really interesting as well, to see that actually some patients were able to tolerate more protein when they were tested for. So I mean, that's something that should be done in every center. I mean, but it's with the difficulties of keeping people on diet, and if you are comfortable with your level, sometimes you don't test or don't push as much as you could, because sometimes we have good surprises and you increase a bit more protein and the levels stay the same, and you continue. And
well, I've just recently had that. So in the sense of I was 8.5 for 10 years, 10 to 15 years. And the weird thing is due to the lockdown element and working from home, I've had a lot more time to cook. I've had a lot more time to make food from scratch. And my level went down to 50, which alarmed Louise and the people of the adult dietitians, and they were like, yeah, that's very low. And I was starting to fall asleep at the drop of a hat, and it was quite weird because it was different to high levels. In a weird way. And then I went up to 9 grams. So now I've been on 9 grams for like 2 months now. And my levels have now got back to the range of 100 to 300, which is what I normally run. But it is that weird thing of like, oh, I now can have 9 grams, and it's that what are you comfortable? I guess it's echoing what you're saying about the pushing element and finding your limit. And I think an area that maybe hasn't necessarily been researched is the lifestyle of the patient, and how that can impact in how much they can consume and obtain, isn't it?
Do you think you are eating more when you are at home, or? Well, because of lockdown, I'm just thinking.
No, calorie-wise, I don't think so.
No?
I think I was probably a bit more regimented on the times, so I was having food a lot more regularly, because my office is just above my kitchen, so it's like the food is just there. Whereas when I was teaching or filming and stuff, it's a bit further away. So I think because they said when the levels were low, it's that you can either increase your exchanges or increase your calories, and I don't necessarily like calorie counting, too much. So I was like, I'll just increase my exchanges. And I was nervous because, as you are when you do a change, you're like, is this going to result in high levels, like we've been saying with the people with good levels don't really want to push it because they're like, will that knock me off kilter? And I do generally just think it's because I had more time to cook and to make food and to basically live the diet that you should be living in a sense, rather than just snacky on the go ready meals, which is not necessarily the way that the diet is designed in a sense, or it's not designed at the moment. So that was a weird change for me, which is a bit like what you were saying with the pushing how many exchanges.
So you have been cooking more low protein foods then at home?
Yeah, low protein or just things from scratch. So if I have a veg curry or something, I've got, sometimes I like to distract myself from work by making something like a big dinner, rather than when I come home from work, I don't want a big dinner sort of thing. So I thought it's quite interesting in that respect. What do research? This is just me asking purely for me. Where's the crossover between mild and classical? In terms of, is it an exchange crossover, or is it the enzymes, or? Yeah,
basically it would be if you have more enzyme working or not, and that will depend on your mutations. Or different countries use different definitions. Usually it's about...
Of course they do. Of course
yes. Different countries use different definitions sometimes, but usually it's about the blood fee at newborn screening, and higher ones would be classical, and lower ones would be milder. Or so basically there is a criteria to define it, which then is probably backed up by mutations, which we don't do in this country as well, which I would change that as well.
Well, so explain, if people don't know about the mutations idea, explain what do other countries do compared to this country in terms of mutations.
For example, mutations are specifically, I always end up talking about the same thing, which is BH4. So different mutations probably will have different types of responsiveness for BH4. Usually it's linked with certain mutations, as we can see for other countries. So having the mutations is actually really good when you have BH4 to predict to a certain sense that if patients are responsive or not. So the countries that I've been, most of them have mutations available. I don't know why the UK doesn't do it. I know there is a gene project at the moment, but I don't know the answer why.
So is there like a certain amount of mutations, or is it? And how do they test for the mutations?
So usually you just you have two mutations basically, and sometimes usually the classical forms are associated. This is really biology, really.
No. I'm interested.
I don't think this is that's interesting. But usually, like you have two mutations. They can be the same one, which probably you have a classical type, or they can be different. But there is a huge range of different mutations, usually related to different countries have different mutations, and usually some mutations are connected with a milder PKU and some with a more severe PKU.
But I guess it's this idea that with the BH4 and seeing the responsiveness is that you can trace it, that you can track, and that you can kind of see. If these forms of mutations work, then these people will typically respond quite well, and it's
So what other countries did was like a database where they look at the mutations, for example, and how BH4 worked for patients with those mutations. So you have like percentages, like some have really high percentage of working and some have not, from the experience that they had in other countries and that they put into a database.
Yeah. it sounds like we do need that in a sense. So, I know that Anita's always said that I've got some weird, because my family's from the Ukraine, so I've got some weird Eastern European mutation. So yeah, but I think if it helps the understand the effectiveness and how many people Kuvan can help, then that's certainly going to be useful, isn't it? So Anita again with Alex changing the UK system. What would you?
I'm gonna be fired.
It's fine. Anita's made you say all these things, okay? What would you change our prescription system for accessing? How would you change your the prescription system for accessing low protein foods?
Yeah, I think the prescription system it's too complex. It has my heading, to be honest, because I took a long time when I came here because I couldn't understand how it worked. If I'm honest, it's so complex, so complicated. So for me, it would be just a one-way system. For me, it would be if you could. I mean, I know this is really difficult, but if you could put probably all the low protein foods and being in for example one place and then being delivered to the patients just from one place, that was one thing. Then the second thing would be that they wouldn't be prescribed by the GPs, because for me it doesn't make any sense. They are prescribing something that they don't know about. And the prescription should be done by the dietitians that are specialized, and they are experts on treating patients with PKU. So they know what your requirements are in terms of low protein food. So they should be the ones doing your prescription. So basically, the system would be the dietitian would prescribe just to one place, and you would receive it at home. That would be the system.
Completely agree.
I know there is difficulties, but there are countries where.
How do other countries distribute the low protein? Obviously, some you have to buy, don't you? So that's just a lot, quite in a way an easier system, because it is just purchasing. It is like a normal food. How do the other countries deal with?
For example, there are countries like Portugal, and I know, for example, France, I think, works like that as well, where you have a centralized distributor. So, for example, I think in France it is based in Paris, and in Portugal is based in Porto, where everything comes from one place and sent to the patients, and that's how it works. I mean, there is positives and negatives because there is little nuances to each system. But for example, I remember from Portugal we have quite a lot of big range of low protein foods and protein substitutes available. They all come from the same place, and I think it works well. I think it takes out a lot of headaches from the patients, and from the teams, because when there is a problem with the GP, it needs to be solved as well with the help from the dietitians. So it's time consuming as well. I think at the end of the day, this system, if it would be managed by the dietitians, would save time and resources probably, and would take like the burden from the families, like, because if you have a problem with the GP, this is like with you, or for example a parent of a young child, and it's another thing on top of everything else. You have another problem to sort out, which is to just get the food that your child wants to eat, or that you want to eat. Well, not wanted, you need. That's what you need, because it's like your supermarket in a way.
No, I completely agree. I've said it many a time, I think, on here to many different people. I find it ridiculous that I can only get stuff from chemists that are only open from 9 to 5 when you're an adult, when you don't work. And when you work and you're not free from 9 to 5.
So what do you do?
Exactly. So my old chemist, when I moved out of my home, stopped, like, refused to serve me because I wasn't able to come and collect my stuff, and it would cause a health hazard. And I was like, that's great, thank you. I'd love to be refused my low protein goods. So now I'm a better chemist, but they're the only two chemists in my town. So it's like, this one better work out, otherwise I'm back to the one that doesn't want to serve me because I cause too many boxes. It's a messy system, and if you've got an issue, you go to your GP. My GP's openly said to me that I'm the first person in their 30-year history that they've ever met with PKU. And, I tried to add on new products, and they were like, why do you need all these new products? And it's like, do you want me to try and explain why I need to have multiple different pastas or chocolate or this sort of stuff? And it's a mess.
How do you feel do you feel frustrated about this, or?
No, I do. I think, like, I'm kind of a little bit with the kind of what you said about when you first came to the country, of like, right, if we've got the diet, let's sort it out to the best of its degree, and make sure that everything runs smooth, everything works, and then we kind of like expand them, And I think it's that case of, I get my prescriptions in 3 waves into the chemist. Because they all come from different suppliers. Now, how is that useful when I could only probably go to the chemist once every 2 weeks? I gotta hope they're all there.
And that makes you like, you need to check for the times that they are there, or that you can with your work. So it's another thing to think about.
Yeah, and it's a thing that you want to put to the back of your head, because it should be quite easy, but ultimately they hold the keys with your medicine. So if there's an issue with my loaves, I can kind of look past that. But when there's an issue with my medicine, that's like next level.
Yeah.
Look, I'm contacting Louise at the adults, or I've contacted Anita and gone, do you have any stock? Or then I'm having to, and it's just like that panic element. But I completely agree, and I think we should vote for Alex's prescription system. I think, like you said, Portugal will have issues. Everywhere will have issues, and we'll have issues. But it's, at the end of the day, if it makes it easier for the patient to stick to the condition that they need to stick to, surely that's a benefit.
Because I think, for example, you have so many products that are available, which is already really good. So that's the positive side. I don't see why you have such a complex system. I don't see the reason why. It doesn't make sense in my head. Like, who profits with such a? I don't think it's for anyone's benefit. Either the GP that does something that they don't know about, either you that have many problems assessing the product, or the dietitians, because, as you said, if you have a problem with your protein substitute, you will call them. So they need to go back. Something that they could have done probably in 5 minutes, it will take them.
I think it's the less structure you can take out the system, the easier it will be, in a sense, isn't it? So we've got, what aspects of PKU do you think are still fairly unknown? We've kind of said a bit of the older adults is obviously the unknown at the moment. But what maybe in the children's sector, is there stuff that you think is still kind of untapped, or like not looked into as much, or is it psychological element? Or
I think the psychological element, yes, definitely. And then for me, it's always looking at the future, because it's looking at things that you do in the early years that may change how you are now in terms of your habits or your dietary treatment, or if that influences, for example, your adherence to the diet later on. It might be some factor in the early years, or something that can be done. So it's looking at the different things, and because, for example, you know it better than me that the products have improved a lot. So I guess in terms of palatability, they improved a lot, and that wasn't the case. I don't know, 5-10 years ago, probably, with a protein substitute as well. So it's always a different cohort of patients that will go from there onwards. So that's already people with different treatments, and it's interesting to see how that will affect later on in life.
Well, I guess we've got like we're saying about the ANS GMP and stuff like that. It's the initial basis we know is a benefit, but then once people have had GMP for 20 years, there'll be research again about how that's affected compared to people that haven't had GMP and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's a very good example because the GMP is very recent, so you have the experience of using it for a few years. But what's the result or what's the outcome from using it compared with the normal protein substitute? I don't know, in 10-20 years. Several aspects that it can influence.
We've had what I knew this question would come up even if I didn't ask it.
Okay.
What are your future research ideas? Or I guess because you kind of said to me you don't really have necessarily a paper after this kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, at the moment there is so much things going on that I didn't think about the next research, but there is plenty. I mean,
what have you got to finish off then? Because you've got a few things that you've been looking at. So if you want to tell us about those projects, then that kind of counts as future, doesn't it? So.
Yes, I mean in terms of PKU, so we have a project looking at metabolic control during 7 years and it's a multi-center study, so it's most of the main UK centers participating, and also a lot of centers from Europe. And I think it's going to be a really interesting one when I can finish it, because now it's a bit complex with COVID and everything. But I think it's interesting because it will enable us to check different realities, because we have the UK with the dietary treatment and everything, and then we can compare with the other countries and see how they are doing with other options, or some countries that have less resources as well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting one for everyone.
Do you have with that any expectations? Do you go in with any expectations, or is it purely let's just get the facts and see what happens?
It's like a fishing trip, maybe. So it's like I just want to see the picture. What's happening? I'm completely open, and I'm looking forward to see the results, because I think that one is like a big. It's going to be a big database with a lot of data, and I think it's going to be really interesting to compare all the different countries. Then there is one study that we are doing pretty well, which is assessing impact of fruit and vegetables that are currently counted in the diet, and see how those affect metabolic control, and also comparing different sources of protein. So if they are from fruits and vegetables, or if they are an animal protein like milk or ice cream, things like that. I think that's going to be an interesting one as well, because I think it's important information. And actually, I would like to thank the NSPKU, because they are the ones that supported us with a grant to do that study. And also thank the kids, because they are doing really well. We just have 2 more to go, so hopefully that's going well, and I hope to be able to give you the results maybe next year.
Is that UK only, or is that?
Yeah, that's only in our center at Birmingham Children's, only with kids.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting because obviously that's the hardest time to try and, or when I see a lot of parents, it's that trying to get good nutrients but also protein through healthier ways, isn't it, necessarily? Than
Yeah, and we are looking specifically, for example, about things that have between 75 milligrams to 100 milligrams of it, like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, and just testing if that really affects blood fee control or not. We don't know yet, but you will have to wait for
find out next year
the results. Yeah.
And are you like helping out with any current projects rather than leading projects, or is that kind of always two enough?
I mean, it's always a team work because I mean it's no one. We don't do anything by ourselves, so I also try to help. We have little projects. For example, we have some projects with the students from Birmingham City University. They have. And if you are watching a PKU patient or parent, it's good if you can fill in the questionnaires that are available on the NSPKU. And again, those are really interesting. For example, it's again for us to understand the different dynamics. There is a questionnaire about aspartame. There is a question about eating out, and it's. I really enjoy participating also in those kinds. It's not research like a randomized control trial, but it's really important information because gives you a feel of your daily life and things different than just maybe pure research, but they are really interesting as well.
Well, I guess also that can spark off new research too, isn't it? If you find certain areas that are unknown or that have come together as a part, then it's like, actually we should look into that a bit more or something.
Yeah, I think every research project at the end will lead into new research questions because there is always something to study. So,
and leading on from that, Anita says that she has plenty of projects for you to do in the future.
I know.
So, even if you don't have a mind about what you want to do, Alex, Anita will have an idea. So, from Tamara, she says, from your experience so far, have you noticed any correlations between early year approaches and future outcomes for patients? And any useful advice for like parents with young PKU people or like young people themselves?
Yeah, I mean, in our research, at least in the research that I've taken part, there is nothing really specific about it. That was something that I think there are things to look at that in the future. But there is nothing really that I can remember at the moment. But I think advice for young patients and families is like the importance of diet and just trying to keep on track, try to maybe having a wide variety, try different things, new things as much as possible, even if it's hard sometimes, I know. But I think it's just trying, persist, and being positive about it. So I think that's probably a good thing, being positive about it, because we have like great examples like you. If you follow the diet, I mean, you do pretty well. You are a professor.
Wow.
Lecturers, I think.
See, I'm a senior lecturer, but the irony is, I guess it's when I do have students from abroad, they call me professor, which is like I've got it without even needing the title. It's fine. So
I guess because it's like for us a lecturer is a professor. Yeah. So that's why. Sorry,
No. That's it. Reminded me.
Still thinking about that. Yeah.
No, it reminded me because I've had students from Spain, like northern Spain, and for them they just referred to me as professor, and I was like, whoa. Yeah. But no, I think I think the positive approach is key, and that's something that I always try and echo. Is almost like living in the now, rather than. I know that research obviously lives in the future, sort of thing, but like while especially with people who are trying to wait for, say, like Kuvan and stuff, just try and get get as much now done, and then if that comes along, then great. But at least you've still got your basis sorted, and you're not just waiting in a sense, which I think is the danger that some people can have, isn't it? So
I think it's important. I mean, we need to have hope in new treatments, and we are hoping that they appear, and I think they will.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just trying to keep positive and see what we can do with what we have. So I think. Can I do a question as well?
Go on, you do a question. Go on.
No, because you were talking about your students.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, are you open about your PKU with your students, or how does it work for you? Like,
so I'm open. I'm completely open about my condition to them. I have to do educational trips with them that require me to stay at overnight places, which means that I can't hide the fact that I probably take more food than clothes when I go to, say, like New York or France or something like that. Which they find quite amusing, and then start to try and get space in my suitcase for on the way back, because obviously my suitcase is going to weigh barely anything when I come back. No, I'm completely open with it. They find it quite confusing at the start. Especially, like I say, I have a lot of international students. They find it really confusing. I've had a Malaysian student just be very confused at why I'm weighing chips in Burger King. Whereas I think the English students are a bit more... They know Weight Watchers or diets or that sort of thing, so they just think it's a version of that. I still don't actively try and drink my medicine in front of people, like, necessarily. And I leave that for when I'm... Because I get conscious with my breath a bit with that.
Okay.
But I do take my medicine around them if I need to. But they're very, very aware. Very aware.
Did they ever ask if they wanted to try or not?
They've sniffed the medicine. Yeah. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough for them. They're like, whoa there, and I'm like, I go extreme. So I go well, if I don't take this, I end up in a wheelchair, and they're like, well, you'd have to take it then. And I'm like, obviously it's not scientifically correct, but it's a long period of time rather than just instant. But it's that deterrent. If I present that deterrent to them, then they're quite...
They will understand.
They're like, whoa, okay. And they actually look out for me a bit more, so which is good.
But I also wondered, like, how do you approach them with the PKU subject, for example?
So with the trip,
or do it just comes up, or do you actively? I don't know. I was just asking.
Well, I normally soften the blow to them by saying that I'm vegan, which I am actually out of choice. But obviously a lot of PKU is quite vegan centric anyway. And there's a running joke in most younger adults that if you're vegan, you have to declare it. So I use, like, in terms of if you're vegan, you always say that you're vegan to try and prove that you're better than people because you're vegan. So I use that almost as a haha, I'm vegan, I have to say that. And then, but then also I'm very active on promoting people about their disabilities. So especially in the arts field, promoting yourself in disabilities can get you grants or money or that sort of thing. So I'm very promoting of that. But normally it's trips. That's when it shows itself.
Okay.
And...
So it's not when you get to that point. It's when you have openly the conversation about, or maybe like they just ask, why are you doing that?
Yeah, I normally bring a big suitcase and they're bringing like a little holdall full of like clothes, and they're like, "Well, you got a big suitcase." I have to take all my food, and it's not necessarily a sit down to everybody because I've took like 100 students on a trip before, but it's more so, hey, I have scales, I'll do this, just be used to it, sort of thing.
Did you ever had any problem like in a trip or is it fairly easy and you don't?
Well, it depends what you mean by problem. I guess colleagues get worried that I'm not getting enough nutrients if I just have chips all the time. So they actively try and find places that don't have that like we need to find you something other than chips, and I'm like, I'm fine with eating out and just eating chips. So they're concerned for my health more than I am. Not necessarily. I think the it's always fun watching me go through customs. That's so.
I was wondering about that as well.
the students find it funny to watch me go through customs. One, because I always take a mixture of powder and ready-made because of weight and because of ease. So they're like, he's got white powder on him. And yeah, so when I went to America, obviously they have security style through most major attractions. And I got pulled up a few times because I took balsamic vinegar with me, like round during the day, because I could have a salad somewhere and I like having a dressing. And they were like, why have you got balsamic vinegar going into the 9/11 Memorial Museum? So the students found that quite entertaining because I get picked up on the most random things, and you know they're just walking through like, yeah, I'm all fine. My tutor, he's been pulled to the side. So yeah, it's that sort of like presenting it as funny, and if I have confidence about it, they'll have confidence. So not necessarily problems. I think I normally just laugh them off or try and present them not as an issue, or especially to my colleagues. The colleagues are the ones that I'm more concerned about. And I kind of go, look, I can deal with it. I've been doing it for this amount of time. I save my exchanges. We can eat out anywhere because everywhere has chips. And that's kind of how I do they always want to eat out, they always want to have steaks and that sort of thing. And I'm just like, anywhere with chips. And now sweet potato chips are a bit better, but anywhere with chips, I'm sorted. And that's kind of what I do. And they know that I'm just going to eat some fruit occasionally, I'm going to act healthy sometimes, and then I'm just going to have, well, it was 8.5 grams of 8.5 exchanges of chips in one go, which is extreme.
That's quite a lot.
It looks like I've got like some eating problem going on when it's all in front of me. But, yeah, so that's kind of you know, it's not necessarily problems. It's just I think it's all about the way you present it, and I'm sure you find that with the young people that you work with. It's that sort of like try and be calm. Depends on how you present it, depends on how other people, and that's the same with families too. I find so. But yeah, my mum's just put in the comments going that we had to empty everything out of our suitcase for the first trip abroad when I was 4. Yeah, I've been overweight with cases, and then they open the case because I don't do the medical cases. I don't like doing that, especially when I'm travelling with my students. I try and just fit it all in one case to make it seem the most normal as possible. And yeah, so they were just like, you're overweight. And I was like, well, I did email you saying that I'm bringing this sort of stuff. And so that caused a little bit of a delay. But overall, I think it's got better. As we say about the food, it's got better as people become a lot more aware of different eating kind of things. So yeah, there you go.
No, that's good.
I think it is about that positive approach, and I think and that's the same with work colleagues as students, with any people that you work with. I think if you try and hide it, then it's very hard to then come out to anybody about it. Whereas if you're there first of all and go, "This is me," then it's that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was asking because it depends with the patients. I see more the kids, but we have kids that they just openly say it. In front of the class, there is no problem, and then it depends. Some have are not that open about it. But I was just.
I think you got to have a network around you that means that you're open about it. I can't remember when we travelled back from the ESPKU. I can't remember we found chips, didn't we? We went to McDonald's. So I had that, I need to get chips sort of thing.
I remember.
Yeah, so it's...
I remember, yeah, that's true.
That was a long journey. That was a long journey back. But it's, so I think it's, if you're open about it, and it is hard over teenage though. I think teenage is the toughest time. I think once you get through teenage and you've got a positive thing on the other end, then adult life is a lot better and easier in a sense. So,
what would be your advice then for them?
for teenagers, appreciate that maturity happens over time is my thing. So give people time. Because an 11-year-old isn't going to understand the intricacies of PKU or how PKU affects you or what, how they could help in that involvement as much as they would when they're like 16 or something like that. I think it's about confidence. Understand that you're going to stand out a bit, and understand that it's part. I always try and view it as a bigger process. So at this immediacy, you might feel like you stand out, but from my understanding of seeing other people with the condition around my age now, if you don't stick to diet, you're going to stand out more in adult life than you will do now, if that makes sense. And that's because of the neurological things. So, and that's going to affect you more in getting work, getting relationships, getting that sort of thing, than if 5 friends don't like you from school, sort of thing, because you look a bit weird or that sort of thing. So it's but it is tough, and I think it's about not just penalising yourself if you go through a tough stage. I've always said I had an eating disorder when I was 15, so it's not all bells and whistles, kind of like it's not all, well, hey, you have to be perfect and you're always perfect, but it is just about having those people around you that can pull you back. And I think the key thing, hopefully, is try and get your family perspective on the condition sorted before you hit teenage. And then you've always got a safety element of at home. It's welcomed, it's and then the school is the only issue. Whereas I think the problem comes is when teenagers have a mixture of family issues with the condition and school, then it seems overwhelming, doesn't it? So... that's my, and I think I've spoke to teenage people before and just gone, who's cheated, who's just be open about it. Rather than, I know Anita comes down to you like a ton of bricks, but it's someone has to, but it's not necessarily everyone, in a sense, and that's having that variety of people and having friends that do like you for you as a personality rather than just you're a weird person that weighs a few things. So. But yeah, that's my advice. So I don't know if are there any final questions from you, Alex?
I don't think so.
I don't think. I'll just check my questions on here. No, I think like it'd be really interesting. Obviously, the 7-year project is a bit is the lengthy one, isn't it? So, and you've got like projects coming out next year and that sort of thing. So I mean, we all always have projects coming out. So Anne has a lot of things coming out soon. So and very interesting ones. So I think it's like the little ones that you're saying about the aspartame and the eating out and that sort of thing. The little things that people can do to help, even if they're not necessarily part of a specific research centre. In a sense, which is quite useful, isn't it?
Exactly. You just keep an eye on, for example, an SPKU, which shares a lot of the questionnaires we do and everything. And it's as you say, even if your center doesn't have any research going on, but you can always help. And sometimes it's just a 5-10 minutes questionnaire. But it's quite important for us to always get the more data we can. So. Just a thank you to everyone that does participate in our research.
Yeah, and just think a 10-minute questionnaire is far easier than having people turn up at your house at midnight. So it's the easier type of research, isn't it? So for the participant sort of thing. So but well, cheers for your time then, Alex. Thank you everyone that's joined us, and I hope you enjoy your couple of weeks sunning yourself in Portugal.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me.
That's all right. That's all right. Cheers then, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.